Hello, everybody. Andy Jacob here with the .com magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series. And I have a great show today. Thanks for coming back. I know you watch all the time and you love what we offer with entrepreneurs and people that are moving and shaking the world. But one thing that came across our desk is a very interesting and unique world traveler with a very interesting background, a very interesting experience. His name, of course, is Mr. Roger Brown. And Roger has a great book called Traveler from the Past. We've been able to book Roger on the show. And one thing we're going to do is we're going to be talking about book publishing because Roger has his book published. A lot of people are reading it. It's done very, very well. And a lot of entrepreneurs reach out to me and they say, hey, Andy, how do we publish a book? So we're hoping to get some insight from Roger as well. Roger has a great background, very interesting life story. I mean, he started his career back when he was 11 years old with a hay wagon. We're going to get into that a little bit. And he spent time traveling the world on a sailboat. So Roger, welcome to the .com magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series today.
Thank you.
It's great to have you. You've written this book, Traveler from the Past. You've got the photo of the book behind you. Let's pull the lens back to 30,000 feet. Tell us sort of the reason why you wanted to write Traveler from the Past and what got you started in the writing process.
I guess what started the book was through most of my travels, I made notes, either in the logbook of the boat, or I wrote letters if I was by myself to my wife. And then she saved all those letters, which there's a lot of interesting places that are hard to pronounce and places I had never been before and most people wouldn't go. So this gave me an excellent reference point. But the real reason I guess I wrote it was after I've only been to 3 funerals, and each of those funerals, it was a shock to have somebody, an orator, describe this person's life that they, people that I had been around for 60 years had no idea the scope of the places this person has been and the jobs he had. So I thought, well, I know I've got a lot of people beat and interesting things. And because I know by telling these that people really are interested. So this was one of the motivations that to give my family, which my daughters and granddaughters apparently didn't have a clue of all of this that I took for granted. It goes in one ear and out the other. So now they have a book to for reference. They could read, and this is what my grandpa did. And so this was a big motivation to writing the book. And once I got started, it was just a joy to every day. It's wonderful reminiscing, writing all these down, and all of a sudden I had a book.
Wow. I love it. You took notes throughout the years. I mean, you have an incredible, exciting life. I mean, everything you've done. I mean, you fought forest and wildlife fires for 55 years. You operated dozers and excavators. I mean, a diesel mechanic, offshore oil drilling platforms. I mean, you've done it all. And recently, of course, you took an early retirement and, you decided to go on the ocean blue water in a sailboat and set out on an epic voyage. Tell us about that. Was that something you always wanted to do, going out on a sailboat?
No, it just I've loved the ocean. Since a young man I've been diving, and I learned to scuba dive when I was probably 14 or something like that. And so the ocean was very friendly to me. I feared it, but it was very comfortable. I guess that's a good word. And the sailing came later. My parents decided to retire at age 54. And this totally shocked me. And so when I reached 53, I decided to retire. And it's just was very foreign to me. And but we wanted to travel, and wife and I both. And so we had to sit down and decide what was uh, not only affordable, but what made sense to us as a couple. And the best thing we could come up with was sailboat because it we love travel. It travel, as you know, via plane or whatever is expensive. And plus, when you get there, it now you've got to rent a room, meals, all of this adds up to a lot. So you're kind of limited. Is a 6 months or a year trip is out of most people's budget. So the thought of a sailboat where we could have the travel, we could go anywhere pretty much in the world, park the silly thing at anchor, and go travel. And that's how we ended up visiting the whole continent of South America. Was anchoring it and getting on buses and trains, and it was so affordable, and it worked out almost to the penny what running the sailboat did. So it was
Wow.
much less than living at home for sure.
Wow, what an exciting adventure. And you did that sailboat movement with you and your wife. I mean, you loved it. You decided this was the way to go and this was the way to have a full, exciting, interesting life. And you write about that. And of course, the book, which is so interesting. And your career has really, I guess the best way to describe it is it's been adventuresome. I mean, you've built bale homes in central Mexico and built roads along the jungle, along the Mexican coast, and you wrote this book. For the entrepreneurs watching the show, because as you know, we have a lot of entrepreneurs watching the show, they have very exciting, you know, worldviews. They look at the world in a different way. Entrepreneurs always do. Let's talk about the writing of the book. Did you actually like sit down and type out all your notes, or did you hire a company to sort of put your notes into a book? How did you process writing the book?
Well, I had two slogans that my wife was a wanted to be a writer. She actually never got anything published, but when I would try to write, my grammar was pathetic, and she just gave up trying to correct me because it took so much of her time. And so it I decided, why not write a sentence like I speak? I've been around construction people from the southern states, and I felt comfortable with it. So I basically, a lot of it is written just like that, without corrections, because I understood it. I could read what I spelled, and there's on and on. So no, I did. I just started typing away and on the computer, and most of it I was on the boat down in Mexico, spending the winters down there, and wherever I was, I was writing. And but once I got started, as I say, the letters I wrote back from Southeast Asia, places like that, I used those as reference for the names, but the stories were welded in my mind. They still are, and they're exciting, and I love reminiscing about them. And so that's how the book came. The editors, they did their job from there on, helping design the book, and the amount of pages and all was, I mean, way more. I can show you the thickness of the book. It's
What? Wow.
700 pages, so there's a lot of jabbering going on in there. But it's none of it is none of it's drama or props or anything like that. It's just how things happened, and like people have said, that nothing's more exciting than the truth. and or more interesting. And I there was enough excitement, adventure in it to probably last the rest of my life, but uh, nothing horrible, uh, nothing that that we wouldn't want to do again. It was very enjoyable.
Yeah, you wrote an epic book. I mean, that's amazing. And you've got this book. A lot of people are reading it, but your family can read it, and your kids and your grandkids and your great kids and your great 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 grandkids. I mean, it's going to be amazing, and they're hearing it in your own voice. And I think that's really interesting. And we also know, and we have a little insight, that you also have some other books on tap. But let's give a little shout out to your editors or the people that you collaborated with, your publishers, who helped you with this massive, beautiful, iconic book.
Thank you. Yeah, they've been very supportive. Oh, yeah, as you say, more books. There's a audio being you call it read over by Dwayne Johnson, which is I'm really excited about getting that completed. And there's a book of short stories, one on the just the mighty Himalaya itself, from north or east to west, and then another book with a totally different genre that'll be a surprise to everybody, even myself.
Oh, I love it. I mean, you've become a prolific writer. I mean, this is amazing. When you were a young boy, did you like to write, or did this come later in your life?
This came later. I love to read, so and a lot of different genres, and I would always try to, I guess the word is intimidate or in uh, copy what I read because I loved him. Books like John Steinbeck, for example. I mean, the way he can describe a scene, you're there. It, at best you're at a movie, but you're walking right alongside him and seeing exactly what he sees. And so I just decided to write it as I saw it, and went from there. And it just kept growing.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, obviously, you have this passion for writing. You loved reading early on. You remind me of like a Ernest Hemingway kind of a guy, like a Renaissance man all over the world, living on a sailboat, doing a lot of traveling. You worked with heavy machinery, heavy gear. You started when you were a kid. When you look back on your life, you probably have you probably have some moments where you reflect and you say, wow, that was like a turning point, or that was a time in my life where things seemed to change. Was marrying your wife one of those times? Or maybe you could share another turning point or two that really changed the trajectory of your life.
Oh, yeah, I would say in the house building when I did my first house. It was at the same time my wife and I got married, and I was a deputy sheriff with the Placer County here in Auburn for 8 years. And I was doing this at night, these shifts at night while I was driving truck during the day. So don't ask me how that all fit together, but it did. And I realized to start a new house, uh, that was in a new marriage, it just wasn't all going to fit. So I had to give up something, and I gave up the sheriff's department, which I dearly loved. And during that time, I realized it it really did change me. Number one, when I would go to town, and it was real unusual. It was a three-story pole house, all out of huge timbers. And I had never built anything before. I didn't even build a built birdhouse. And so I started off on this thing that was 50 foot tall and had a handmade crane. And but when I'd go to town, for example, I'd write a check. This was the days in the old days. in the 70s. And people would say, "Are you the Roger Brown that built that Toad Hall house?" And then we get in a little conversation, the checker or whoever, and it just began to take this kid that was really shy, and I really didn't even care to make friends, or it just I was off by myself, and it brought me into the community, and the skills I learned gave me this self-confidence that I didn't even know existed. And so that was a big change in my life. And and again, I loved every moment of it. It took 2 years, uh, a lot of it working on the weekends and late at night, early in the mornings, the poor neighbors, all the pounding and the chainsaw work. And but when it was finished, we owned the home. And that was another change that gave us financial freedom because we didn't have a mortgage. We didn't have all those things connected with that. And all the furniture that was in there were beautiful antiques. They were all paid for. And so that opened up this gateway to travel, more of it. As you said, I've traveled since a little kid, and through the army and Europe and all that, like most people do. But that gave us that financial freedom, that edge, just to do that. Plus, my employer was so kind. I can't ever remember a time when we asked for a month off or 6 months off. He didn't say go, just do it. And my wife was a travel agent too, so that gave us free trips, and it just the whole thing worked so well.
Wow. I look at your life, I look at the thickness of the book, I look at this epic authorship that you have, and I'm saying to myself, I need to get going. I mean, I need to start building some great stories myself. I mean, we can't keep up with you, Roger. Now, you did some work in firefighting, forest fires.
Yes,
That must have been a challenging endeavor. Is that correct?
wonderful. It is wonderful. They have a term for people like me, and it's called the siren chaser. And I loved it. My heart goes out to anybody that's lost even a tree uh, on their property, let alone their home, and their whole life is devastating. And that's where we give our all as a fireman to try to save that. And it isn't always possible, and especially with people moving out into thicker brush and just getting away, and reasonable properties to buy. And so when I'd hear that bell go off and I was sent to a fire, it normally was with a heavy piece of equipment like a bulldozer and sometimes a water truck. But and my boss shared the same love. He was 2/3 Dalmatian at heart, and we both loved going to fires. And so it was. I can't remember. Recently some of the Santa Rosa fires in the Bay Area that were just devastating. There was times when, yes, the flames were over top my cat, and I couldn't see, the smoke, and but yet I never felt I was in peril in that respect. The new cats have fire shelters inside them, fire curtains and enclosed cabs, air conditioning, freezing your little butt off inside there, and even with the flames outside. And it's exciting. It's another adventure, and I felt my whole life, including the travel, was a giant adventure. Every phase of it. There was a lot of unknowns, a lot of forks in the road that I was guided into taking the right ones, and it's been a wonderful life.
Wow. Very motivational, very inspiring. Before I let you go, and I could have you on the show for 4 hours. I mean, with all the stories you have, it's incredible. And that would only nick the surface. But before I let you go, I want you to talk to other people that maybe want to be an author. Maybe they want to write a book. They're aspiring authors, let's call them. You know, let's talk about it because it's not easy. You have to stay very resilient in the literary world. You need to kind of knock it down. In your case, you were on the sailboat. You had some good quiet time to write the books. What kind of advice can you give to aspiring authors that want to write a book, whether it's their life story or whether it's a business book or a book about their company or a motivational book or a book about AI, if you will? What kind of advice could you give to aspiring authors right now?
Well, one of the things that gave me the confidence to begin and to keep pushing. Sure, I had my times of writer's block. I think we all have that. But it was the little slogan that says writers write. And that meant you didn't talk about it, you didn't think about it, but when the time came, you wrote. And that's what keeps it going. Uh, and and the other part is advice for me personally, since I haven't taken writing classes ever, and I was, as I said, lousy in English classes, which is usually a requ re requirement for writing a book, and was that write about something you know about, uh, at least for your first one, and that's where it gave me the confidence. I knew what I was talking about. I'd been there. I'd lived it. I loved it. They were all fresh in my mind, and simply write it, and I didn't have to make anything up. Sure, I did some research to uh, along the way, which is exciting in itself. You're learning more, and but just to write what you know about, and at least for your first one, and then get brave and branch out. Who knows? There's so many avenues in big world.
I love it, Roger. Before I let you go, I want to give a shout out again to your editors and publishers. Who did you use to help you with the book?
Book marketeers.
All right. So good job, book marketeers. Wow. I mean, what a beautiful, beautiful volume of writing you have. You're going to continue on a lot of exciting things. You've motivated us. You've challenged us to look at the world in a different way, Roger. You've motivated the people watching to sort of look at their life and say, wow, am I getting everything out of my life that I can? And you're really doing that. Your family's very lucky to have the book and to have you. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the .com magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight series today, Roger.
Thank you, sir.